Dr. Adams of North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. Before I begin my questions, I need to speak plainly about what's happening back home in Charlotte. Last month, Border Patrol agents descended on Charlotte in unmarked cars, wearing tactical gear, carrying long guns, making arrests across churches and grocery stores and school neighborhoods. No warnings, no coordination, and the fear was immediate. Families kept their children home, workers stayed inside, and parents told me that they were afraid to even open their doors. And by Monday, November 19th, by that morning, more than 30,000 Charlotte-Mecklenburg students were absent from school, nearly 1 out of every 4 students in my district. And these children didn't stay home because of a book in the library. They didn't stay home because of a curriculum dispute. They stayed home because they were terrified. And while we sit here today debating whether parents can access curriculum, something they already have the right to do, the real crisis hurting students right now is fear in our communities, food insecurity, housing instability, and the loss of trust between families and schools. And this is not hypothetical for me. I'm a 40-year retired professor. I represent these children, and I'm a mother and a grandmother as well. But I represent these families. And when students are too afraid to walk through the school doors, there's no FERPA reform or PPRA amendment that will matter. And so today I want to focus on student safety and student privacy and the real consequences of getting this wrong. And so let me just turn to our witnesses. Mr. Vinsky. So thank you, first of all, for being here. You've written extensively about FERPA was created. Can you explain why FERPA was necessary when it was enacted before this law, where student records, grades, discipline, even personal information sometimes shared casually or without limits?
Thank you for the question, Representative. FERPA was enacted to address 2 twin harms. One, as Senator Buckley, a conservative from New York, put it, is to address secret student records that might be used in ways that are harmful to students, whether they be disclosed to employers or be used in law enforcement proceedings. And these are particularly harmful when parents and students do not have the opportunity to access those student records or request their correction. And so the idea of access and correction of records became core to the rights that FERPA established. But there was a second harm as well, which was the disclosure of information without parental consent or consent from adult students. And this particular harm was one that surfaced in ways where, for example, Senator Buckley described student records being used in FBI proceedings or in instances where it was being disclosed for sale and marketing. And FERPA was largely drafted along with the PPRA to address those 2 twin concerns of 1, secret records, and 2, unlawful disclosure.
Great, thank you. And so if FERPA had not existed, could a student's immigration status have been shared in ways that put that child or an entire family at risk?
I would think so. Prior to the enactment of FERPA, there was no great regulation of with whom student information could be shared. Some states had passed laws to that effect, many had not. And I think there was an underlying assumption that sharing with other governmental agencies, no matter what reason the information was collected for originally, was permissible.
Okay, finally, do you see any gaps in how FERPA protects or fails to protect immigrant students and mixed status families who are living with real fear today?
2 major concerns stand out. One, of course, is lack of understanding about how FERPA applies among school officials. I'm a former teacher. I do recall my FERPA training, which was largely when you have a conversation with a parent, make sure the papers on your desk are turned over. There was no deep concern what to do if a law enforcement officer shows up demanding student files. So deeper guidance and training is always necessary. I want to point to one exception called the directory information exception, which I think is probably what Representative Miller was referring to, that allows the disclosure of student addresses without their consent. It applies to other information, but I think it's important that Congress and the Department of Education take a hard look at that exception and see if it needs to be updated.
Thank you. We've heard claims that parents can't see what their children are learning. As a former professor, a parent, I've always understood that parents can ask questions, meet with teachers, and review curriculum. And under current law, can a school district refuse a parent access to curriculum? You got 1 second.
No, they may not.
Thank you. I yield back.